Hello, ladies and gents. It's Clean Shaven Bays. Thomas Ruse Bazar with the Poet Warriors. And today I want to talk about a writer. It's not a retrospective. I guess it is. I'll talk about several of his books, why I'm interested in this writer, what books I've read about this writer, some of the books he read. I mean, he wrote, not he read. I know all the books he read. So anyway, the writer in question is V.S Naipaul. This gentleman won the Nobel Prize. He's a very interesting writer. He was born in Trinidad and Tobago, or let's just call it Trinidad. And he comes from his lineage is from India, meaning Hindu background, and that very much factors into his work. His work explores themes of colonialism, post-colonialism. He wrote a lot of fiction early on. One of his books that put him on the map was called The House for Mr. Biswas. The huge novel that I think centers around where he was, Trinidad, and some characters, a lot. His writing is very autobiographical, I think, a lot of elements like that. And then he started transitioning into nonfiction, creative nonfiction, exploration of places like the South, the Caribbean, where he was from, the West versus the East. He did a book called Something for El Dorado, The Quest for El Dorado, where he explored again the same colonialist theme, historical themes of South America, the conquistadors, that whole quest for gold and empire, and how empire plays into he wrote like 1950s to early 2000s, so there was a lot of exploration, especially in his books, about colonialism, the effect of colonialism, the effect of these countries, these third world countries trying to become modern, and the struggle with that. And so he wrote a lot of these kind of, I don't want to call them travelogues, but like these type of books, especially later on. And it seems like he started breaking away from fiction. Not entirely, but mainly. He's a very interesting writer. I find at times when I read him, he seems a little bit stiff for me. He's very. I mean, look, his writing is top notch. Meaning, the rhythm of his work, the syntactical quality, the structure of his writing, I think is very, very strong. But the content itself, especially later on, for me, it just seems very dry, almost too academic. And it breaks away from his earlier writing, which was much more comedic, lighter, maybe more absurdist because of the influence of factors of his growing up in Trinidad, Hindu background, all kind of converging, the Caribbean kind of overtones or undertones to a lot of his work as well. This one is a book I'm starting to read now. I think it's a group of stories, short works, with the one In a Free State being probably the longest. So I'm gonna, after I read, I'm gonna probably do a book capsule review. I read this bio of his, "The World Is What It Is" by Patrick French, and he's very interesting. It seemed like a very competitive, writer. Wanted to make a mark. His father was maybe a wannabe writer or was a writer, but never kind of, took it to the next level. And I think V.S. Naipaul, his son, did just that and took it to, and then he moved to England. And I think his life became very much that Eurocentric, maybe Anglo. He really embraced that kind of Anglo existence. which I think affected his writing. You see it in his work as well. That very well written, almost 19th century. When you take away what from I don't know, writers like Thomas Mann, who was in 19th century, but Anthony Trollope. That whole school of British writers and late 19th, early 20th century writers. I think that Kingsley Amis. I don't know. Like you're talking a whole group of writers that I think V.S. Naipaul was influenced by to some degree. He was a very difficult guy. It seemed like stayed true to whatever he wanted to do. Actually, one of the best books I read is called In Sir Vidia's Shadow by one of his good friends, Paul Thoreau. And Paul Thoreau actually talks about his lifelong friendship with Naipaul. And it's kind of a tell-all book, but it's very well done. Controversial as hell because it doesn't make Naipaul look really good. It doesn't put him in the best light. You hear things always about, from certain people why, he like a cantankerous guy, wouldn't budge an inch. And, I think at the end of the day, I hate to say this, but I think it's true. I think writers especially are a very competitive bunch. It already is a very, very dog-eat-dog world, the publishing world. That kind of played out with Thoreau and Naipaul, that, kind of not even friendly competition, but that competition that got as Thoreau, the young upstart, the younger writer who, his mentor Naipaul. Then you have the writer who's now starting to become really well-known, even maybe selling more books than Naipaul. That kind of eats away at the ego, and sure enough, Naipaul seemed to have a really, really big ego, but he is worth reading. I think again that whole sense of trying to figure out the modern world, how all these colonial, so-called empires, and the countries that they inhabited, kind of the after effects, and I think. Naipaul really explored that theme, those type of themes in his works, and he's worth looking at for that reason. All right, hope you enjoyed it. Peace. Tasty.